and renamed it using that option there. Oops, just close that down. And if you scrub through the timeline, you'll see that that shape then is pulled around the letters of CG Academy. You can see it actually moves along. And it just goes along there and writes the text out. Now there's one more element which is very, very small, so I'll just go into perspective mode and zoom in here to the end of here. You can see I've actually got a tiny little sphere right at the end of the laser, and you can see it's just, in this case, it's actually just linked to this helper as well, and that just moves along, and that's actually used as a point from which we actually emit our sparks and we emit our melting metal from. So there we go. We've got this procedural laser coming down here. We've got this hand animated laser material. We've got this hand animated gradient ramp that goes across and does this reveal, this etching into the surface. The same gradient ramp is used to produce this glowing hot effect. And you can see in that respect that's pretty cool. That's all pretty cool stuff. And that is then tied in with particle effects, which we'll have a look at now. In many ways this scene is actually a relatively simple one particle-wise, but it's more the combination of the materials and these other elements that actually make this maybe a little bit more complex to explain. But as I said, in many effects, particles are only part of the story, and this was certainly the case in this one. But you can see that it's a valid case for doing particle effects. I wanted sparks, and I wanted melting dribbles of metal. And those, to me, were the best way to do them was to do them using particles. So to get all the background material working for this effect, I've done all of this background material here. So you've got this metal cube and the etching and all that and so forth. So if I open up particle view and we have a look at what we've actually got in there, we've actually got two flows. We've got sparks, which is used obviously to produce the sparks. And to the side of it you can see we've got runny metal, and that's obviously used to produce the molten metal as it runs down the surface. So if I go to sparks and just turn that on, and I'll just let it play a bit and you'll see what goes on here. Let me just rewind that. Actually, before we go any further with this, I'd actually better go to display. I'll turn on hiding helpers again, and I'll actually, let me just quickly show you the space swaps that we've got going on in the scene. We've actually got two deflectors, one with low bounce, which you'll see here. We've got a bounce value of 0.13, and one called high bounce, and you can see that's got a bounce value of 0.6. And they're just used for the two different types of effects, one for sparks and one for the metal. And we just needed different bounce values for each one to get a better sort of effect. Then we've got, you can see we've got wind here. You can see it's got a strength of 0, so you can see yet again we're using wind purely for its turbulence effect. You can see I'm using quite a large scale value. As I explained in DVD4, when I say large I mean a very small scale value, and that gives you a very large turbulent effect, very large and wavy. And that's just used to sort of give it, a little bit of chaos to the dribbles as they run down the metal cube. We've got a drag space warp, and that's obviously just used in the usual way to dampen down the energy in our particles and to stop them becoming too excited, and to stop them accelerating endlessly and so on. And then you can see we've got a gravity space warp here, and we've got it at a sort of funny angle, and the reason for that was I wanted to kind of have the cube look like it was at an angle, and for the metal to sort of run down the surface. And if I had the gravity lying flat onto the surface, obviously there would be a tendency for the particles to just land on the surface and just stick there and just stay there in a little pool. And I didn't want that. I wanted them to run and dribble down the surface. So you can see I've actually angled the gravity to do that, to pull the particles down the surface somewhat. So those are the space warps. We've got, as I said, we've got wind, drag, gravity, and we've got two deflectors here to stop our particles dropping through the surface. So I'll just hide these space warps and unhide particles. And if I press play here, I was just doing a little bit of run up there. If I just go back to frame 0 and press play, you can see as the laser goes along, it's actually emitting particles from the tip of the laser, and they come from the little tiny sphere that I was showing you just previously. So if we go back to the beginning, we quickly have a look at how this script works. You can see we're birthing particles from frame 20, which is basically when the laser switches on and first starts to cut away at the metal. And you can see it's